You want to talk about evolving positions? Trump predicated his entire 2015 campaign when he was running as a fake populist on a jobs boom, on passing an infrastructure law, on having a healthcare reform bill that would make healthcare
but here's the problem.
less expensive and less expensive, Piers. Hold on, less expensive, Piers, and more comprehensive. He didn't pass any of that. Not only did he not pass it, he didn't try. He used all of his political capital in office not to do any of those populist things that he promised when he was running for office, but rather to just pass a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. That's what he actually cared about. And that's what he did when he actually had the power.
Brian Tyler Cohen was a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, where he engaged in a debate with far right-wing MAGA supporter Natalie Winters. As you can imagine, things got pretty heated. It was also very entertaining. We're going to take a look at clips from Piers Morgan's show. I'll share my thoughts here and there. Let's check this out together.
Well, joining me now is the co-host of Steve Bannon's War Room, Natalie Winters, and the host of No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, which is, of course, Brian Tyler Cohen. Well, welcome to both of you. Brian, there's a lot of confidence from a lot of people around Kamala Harris. I don't think I'd be feeling overly confident right now, because although the national polling looks quite encouraging, the swing state polling looks very, very tight. And I'm hearing that the numbers that we're not seeing suggest the Electoral College is still more likely than not to edge towards Trump. What's your take on this?
Well, I think that Kamala Harris herself says that she's the underdog in this race. I think the mentality from day one has been that she's not entitled to anything. You'll remember, I can't remember exactly where this happened, but she was asked about her support with Black Americans, and she said, just because these people are Black doesn't mean I'm entitled to them, which of course stands in stark contrast to what Donald Trump thinks, which is that he's entitled to everybody's vote just by virtue of him deigning to be in that race. So I think that, from the very beginning, it's been clear that she is going to work to actually get the votes of every single demographic group, regardless of whether they're similar to her by virtue of skin color or political party or whatever it is.
What about when she's on a stage with Oprah Winfrey and suddenly morphs from one of the most anti-gun senators in modern American history to sounding like she's Rambo's little sister? You come to my place, I'm going to shoot you. Are we supposed to buy into this incredible, transformation from the woman who wants to get rid of guns to the woman who packs one and wants to shoot people that break in?
Well, hold on. There's a big difference between having a gun in your house for self-defense or thinking like a handgun in your house for self-defense, and then thinking that we should just have a proliferation of AR-15s that are readily accessible and available to anybody over the age of 18 in this country when they're the weapons that are used in mass shootings day in and day out. And conflating the two is doing a massive disservice to the efforts of people who are actually working to make kids safer in this country.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but I was very surprised about what she said. I mean, Natalie, were you convinced that suddenly this candidate that you assumed was the big gun grabber in the Senate now wants to proudly talk about her ownership of guns and her willingness to use them?
Absolutely not. This is just a continuation of the performative activism that we saw, I think, unfold most poignantly at the DNC, where you suddenly had the Democrats embracing patriotism, the American flag, something that they haven't done for a while. And frankly, the issue is, and it's why Kamala Harris hides on the campaign trail, is the fact that the same protesters, whether they're outside the DNC, whether they're on college campuses, it's the same donors, it's the same supporters, it's the same dark money network groups that are funding both sides of the Democratic Party. So Kamala Harris can try to appeal to Republicans, whether it's the White Dudes for Harris videos or try to talk soft when it comes to gun issues or put out things like camo hats, but that doesn't reverse her long track record of not just having policies that don't square with swing state voters, but truly being a radical. And don't take my word for it, take Bernie Sanders' word for it. Just last week, appearing on the Sunday shows, saying that she's only moderating her position on a myriad of issues just to win the election.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, that is surely indisputable. If you look at her positions in 2019, when she first ran for president, and compare them now, the number of not just flip-flops, just open, blatant U-turns is extraordinary. And one of the reasons she's not doing big interviews if she can possibly avoid it, is she doesn't want people reminding her of this remarkable journey she's gone on from left-wing progressive to centrist.
Piers, what she said when she was running a primary campaign in the previous election is not how she would govern now when she's had the experience of 4 years
You mean
being
we shouldn't have believed
the vice
her?
president.
We shouldn't have believed her.
It's that people have their positions when they're running primary campaigns in previous election cycles.
When was she lying to us, Brian, is my point. Should we have believed her in 2019? I mean, we're not talking about someone in their 20s. We're talking about somebody who's 60. So
it's funny with Piers Morgan because if you watch his show enough, he always claims that he's not a right winger. And when any time when people come on his show, like for example, Cenk Uygur says that he's a MAGA supporter and he's a right winger and all of this, and he always bristles at it, like, how dare you say I'm a right winger? And people in England would think that's laughable. But he never seems to critique Donald Trump very much, and he always goes hard on his critique of Democrats. And with the idea of Kamala Harris being a centrist, the polling when Biden was running was showing that just a generic Democrat beats Donald Trump by 6 points. And I think that's what the Kamala Harris campaign is doing right now, is basically saying, we don't have to do anything. Progressives wouldn't be happy about this because, for example, she was a proponent of Medicare for all, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen if she's elected president. And that's a very popular policy position. But her campaign basically understands in order to beat Donald Trump, they can be centrist. They don't really have to appeal to progressives that much, which is what Piers Morgan doesn't seem to be able to see, and that Brian Tyler Cohen understands.
She was in her mid-50s and an American senator when she put these positions forward in 2019. Are we supposed to now accept that she was lying then, and that wasn't what she really means or believes? And then that comes to the issue of credibility. Or do we accept that now she doesn't mean what she's saying now? She just wants, as Natalie said via Bernie Sanders' interview, she just will do whatever it takes to win.
Piers, people run primary campaigns and try to figure out their lane in the Democratic Party, and their positions evolve over time when things change in this country. Right now, she's had the experience of 4 years as vice president, recognizing how to properly run an economy, how to properly protect healthcare and expand its access among Americans, how to properly make sure that we have common sense gun safety restrictions, how to properly actually pass legislation that Donald Trump pretended he would pass. You want to talk about evolving positions? Trump predicated his entire 2015 campaign when he was running as a fake populist on a jobs boom, on passing an infrastructure law, on having a healthcare reform bill that would make healthcare
but here's the problem.
less expensive Pierce. Hold on, less expensive, Pierce, and more comprehensive. He didn't pass any of that. Not only did he not pass it, he didn't try. He used all of his political capital in office not to do any of those populist things that he promised when he was running for office, but rather to just pass a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. That's what he actually cared about. And that's what he did when he actually had the power. So it's ironic that we're talking about what Kamala Harris said in a few months when she was campaigning in a primary. Donald Trump had the ability to actually govern that way, and he squandered it.
But you're missing a point. She's also had that ability because she's been the vice president to Joe Biden for nearly 4 years. So
this very much sounds like whataboutism from Piers Morgan. It's like, yeah, but what about Kamala? And as Brian Tyler Cohen is saying here, Donald Trump wanted to get rid of Obamacare and kept saying, oh, I'll announce my plan in 2 weeks for the healthcare plan that Donald Trump would supposedly replace Obamacare with. It never happened. He said that multiple times. And that's one of the craziest things with the Republicans is that for years and years now, they've been wanting to get rid of Obamacare with no plan to replace it in any way. So Donald Trump can lie about healthcare, claim that he had a healthcare plan, and never present one. And Piers Morgan is fine with that, but Kamala Harris has changed some of her policies and she's lying.
But the vice president doesn't dictate policy. You know that.
She's a senior part of the administration. She's one heartbeat away from running.
It's Joe Biden's administration.
As we've now discovered, she's one heartbeat away from running the country, which many people think she currently is, given the state of Joe Biden. Natalie, how plausible is it that she can continue to duck the media, duck the Al Smith dinner, not really make herself accountable on the flip-flopping, and present herself as a page turner, a new page based on the fact that as if almost she wasn't part of the administration for the last 4 years. I'm the breath of fresh air. I'm the promised land. To which my response would be, well, where have you been for the last 4 years?
Well, and to that point, I think it's profoundly ironic that we're already going back to 2019 to 2020 to focus on her statements in the primary. She has 4 years as a VP with, frankly, not just nothing to show for it, but just botched Afghanistan withdrawals, abysmal policy records on the border. So even if you want to go to her, post-transformation, apparently she's no longer radical. If you want to look at her record now, someone who gloats and touts the fact that she was the last person in the room when it came to making decisions on the Afghanistan withdrawal, and someone who's, so proud of her record on the border, she won't even embrace her border czar moniker. I don't really think you even have to go back to the primary to look for evidence that Kamala Harris is not a candidate that has a solid track record to run on. And that's squarely why she's dodging the mainstream media, and of course hostile media networks too. But you're going to see the Democrats continuing to roll out endorsements from out-of-touch Hollywood elites, or frankly the national security officers. It started out with the 4 anonymous ones that tried to smear Trump as a Russian agent. Then in the 2020 election, it was the 51 anonymous intel officers who said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. And now it's a couple hundred. I guess that's how desperate they are. National security officials that they have to wheel out to prop up this candidate who is essentially an empty vessel that is being, pushed and shepherded by the most radical elements of the Democratic Party, and is only moderating right now because they admit it. They are engaging in a campaign to go after Republican voters.
Why didn't Donald Trump say all this at the debate when he had the chance with, tens of millions of Americans watching? Why did he get sucked into her?
Because Donald Trump was talking about conspiracy theories of people eating cats. Donald Trump has no ability to talk about any actual policy at all.
Trap, which clearly worked. She won that debate. Whatever anyone else tries to spin it, I can tell you categorically she won it. And she won it because she played to his kind of narcissism, and he wasn't able to articulate all the things you've just said about her own positions and the weaknesses of those. And I think that was a mistake. Do you agree?
It's precisely why I think Trump wanted to have a debate on Fox. He wanted to have questions that would have teed up actual substantive conversations.
Yeah, but he could have done it there.
Sorry, what was that?
Well, he could have done it in the last debate. Everyone knows Trump's a great debater. All he had to do was whatever question he got asked, he could have just directed his answer straight at her.
Everyone knows Donald Trump's a great debater. I think Piers Morgan believes that, but does anybody else?
And asked her all the things you've been talking about, but he didn't.
President Trump tried to drive the conversation more towards immigration. I think whether it's trade, immigration, or foreign policy, they're sort of issues that are both on the same side of the same coin, or rather two sides of the same coin. But I think Kamala Harris did maybe rattle him a little bit by getting him to talk about rally size and crowd size. But, I think the broader ideas of Trumpism, talking about immigration, and I think for my co-panelists to say that Trump didn't deliver on anything with regard to the populist agenda is just patently false. I think Kamala Harris is trying to do a cheap astroturfed version of that now. But that's why Kamala Harris is running for cover, whether it's ABC debate moderators or scared to have debates on Fox News, because if she's actually pressed on her immigration track record, which I guess she's apparently not the border czar, she knows she can't answer for it.
Brian, look, it's going to be a very tight race. Every pollster I talk to says it's going to be right on a knife edge, right to the conclusion here, which is not unexpected given the way the last few elections have gone. What do you think is going to happen? Do you genuinely believe Kamala Harris is going to win?
Yes, I do believe that Kamala Harris is going to win. Look, we all have limited information that we're going by right now. All we can really look at is the polls, is the momentum. At that point, we try to glean what little information we can. But I think that what I said at the top of this segment still stands, which is that Democrats are the underdogs. Donald Trump does have the incumbency advantage to some degree, even though he's not the direct incumbent, but was prior to this. And I think that it's incumbent on Kamala Harris to do what she's been doing, which is to reach as many people as humanly possible, to continue crisscrossing all of these swing states. She's done about 35% more rallies, her and Tim Walz together, 35% more rallies and events than Donald Trump and J.D. Vance has, which I think may actually be a smart strategic move by the Trump campaign, considering every time he goes out on stage at either a rally or an interview, he decides to open his mouth and insert his foot.
Out of interest, Brian, who do you think is running the country right now? Is it Joe Biden or is it Kamala Harris or is it Jill Biden?
It's Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden.
A couple of points here. It's funny what Natalie Winters said about Trump and immigration, that if he could have had the debate on Fox News, they would have asked him better questions or whatever. But in both debates, the debate with Kamala Harris and the debate with Joe Biden, Donald Trump, no matter what the question was, he talked about immigration.
Do not feel better off because the raging inflation throughout.
I think it's also ironic that there's this claim that, for example, the Biden-Harris administration hasn't governed effectively in this country. We have 16 million jobs added. We have the strongest economy in the entire world. We have the lowest unemployment rate in half a century. We have a record high stock market right now. And all of the legislation that the Biden-Harris administration was able to pass stands in stark contrast to what Trump was able to pass.
But why is it? So why,
from the
Brian,
American Rescue
Brian,
Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the gun safety law, the infrastructure law.
Why is it when she was asked at the debate, question one, are the American people better off after your term in office with Joe Biden? She didn't answer the question. And the reason for that is that the majority of Americans in all the polling do not feel better off because the raging inflation throughout the administration, their 4 years in office, the raging administration, I don't blame them for all of it, of course, but the raging inflation has made the cost of living for millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans extremely difficult. So when they keep hearing the boasts about jobs and the economy and best in the world and blah, 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 actually what they think is, I can't afford to feed my kids. And that's why there's a disconnect between what the rhetoric coming out about we're so great for your economy when they're not feeling it. And that could be what in the end swings it to Trump.
Which is, you just answered your own question. The reason that she's not bragging about the economy, even though I'm content to, because I think it's important that Democrats do that, because while Donald Trump was bragging about losing 3 million jobs and a 6.3% unemployment rate and a 3.4% economic contraction, I think we do need people out here acknowledging reality, and that is that we have a stronger economy, leagues stronger than when Donald Trump was in office. She was very right to go out there and say, and not beat her chest over what the Biden administration has done, the Biden-Harris administration have done economically, but instead say that there's so much more work to do, that people are still hurting.
There's only one reason, Brian, come on. There's only one reason why a presidential candidate of an incumbent party presidency, in other words, a Democrat nominee this time, there's only one reason she wouldn't boast about the economy roaring away in the euphoric way you talk about, and that's because she knows people don't believe it.
Are you saying that people don't believe the facts that I just said about the economy, that we have 16 million added jobs? I'm saying,
by your own admission, she won't boast about it because she knows that is not what people are feeling in their own lives.
There is polling that Piers Morgan apparently doesn't want to present, showing that for the first time in decades for a Democrat, that voters actually trust Kamala Harris more on the economy than they do Donald Trump. Donald Trump keeps coming out and talking about tariffs that aren't going to work, and Kamala Harris talked about actually doing something to try to deal with corporations gouging people in supermarkets, which the media was aghast about that even being proposed by Kamala Harris, that, that's communism and all this kind of stuff. But then it polled really, really well because normal people are looking at the prices in the grocery stores and saying, oh, hey, if you would do something about these prices to force the corporations to not gouge people, we like that. And the media says, oh, that's communism. that socialism or whatever. And the average person says, I don't care what you call it. I just want the grocery prices to be lower.
Majority of Americans are really struggling with the cost of living crisis. So there's a massive disconnect.
Which is why it's important to talk about what she's offering for the future. That is why she gives
has nothing,
a vision for the future.
I've watched her interview. She says she just talks in word salad nonsense. There's no actual concrete policy. She said, I'm from the middle class. I know people. Hang on. She said, I know people who like their front lawn. Well, we all know people who like their front lawn, are proud of their lawn. But all she says is, I'm proud of being middle class. I'm going to make all your lives better. And by the way, it's going to be joyful. Well, I'm sorry, but if I'm struggling to feed my kids, right, I don't want to hear this word salad stuff. I want to hear concrete policy. And whatever you think.
I love that Piers Morgan and these other right-wingers are throwing out the word salad stuff with Kamala Harris. Have you heard Donald Trump speak before? I mean, how disingenuous is this by Piers Morgan?
Whatever you think of Trump, there is a belief amongst his supporters that their lives got better economically.
Because their supporters will believe anything that Donald Trump says, whatever. They believe that immigrants are eating cats and dogs and ducks and geese.
Notwithstanding the pandemic, which ravaged the end of it, but certainly before the pandemic hit, Trump's economic policies had a material effect on many Americans where they felt they were better off. And that's the difference.
Piers, a $50,000 tax credit for small businesses that are created, a $25,000 $25,000 to first-time home buyers, going after price gougers. I mean, there are actual policies here. Meanwhile, if you ask Donald Trump what his thoughts are on childcare, you're going to get a 2-minute rambling diatribe where he strings together words that alone may have some meaning, but together just sound like the unhinged, incomprehensible screeds of someone whose synapses may be firing, but aren't actually meeting him on the other side.
Natalie, I mean, it's interesting to me because on the one hand, you've got a candidate who's been in office with the president for 4 years now, but doesn't want to boast about the economy's performance. And on the other hand, you have a candidate who was president who very happily boasts about his economic record when he was president, again, notwithstanding the once-in-a-generational pandemic. Could that in the end swing it Trump's way? I've got a feeling it might, especially in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, these kind of places, where a lot of working class people and middle class people are really feeling the economic pinch. They don't think the economy is roaring, but they believe Trump might get it going again.
Well, I'm just curious if the numbers that he's referencing are pre or post revision, because it seems like the Biden-Harris administration really has a problem when it comes to the Bureau of Labor statistics coming out, showing that I believe it's the last 6 or so job reports they've had to revise down most sizably. What was it? The 877,000 jobs that they had falsely reported that never actually existed. And if you actually drill down into these numbers, again, I think why you see American people actually flocking to the Trump economic policies, so many of these jobs have actually gone to non-citizens or people who are green card holders and not actual American workers. So it might not be outsourcing directly to other continents, but in some ways it's a continuation of sort of that establishment, decades-old policy of doing that. But it seems like the Harris campaign, the best thing that they can do is do cheap ripoffs, sort of intellectual property theft of the Trump campaign, whether it's the tax on tips or anything to that ilk. But I think the question remains, like we've been talking throughout the entire thread of this discussion, if all of these ideas were so great and they wanted to implement them right now, why hasn't Harris done anything? Why didn't Biden ever task Harris with doing anything on the economy? The only areas she's ever allegedly been deputized to enforce have been the border, which she failed abysmally on, rolling out internet programs and broadband. There's absolutely nothing to show for that. The only track record she has a solid, performance on is wasting taxpayer dollars. So I don't trust her to be advocating or negotiating on behalf of American families when she can't even secure the southern border.
Okay, well, we're going to find out. Interesting debate. Thank you both very much.
Okay, so I feel like Brian Tyler Cohen presented himself really well here on Piers Morgan show with Natalie Winters here. It's the typical MAGA nonsense, and Brian Tyler Cohen had to battle against Natalie Winters and Piers Morgan himself. And I think it's hilarious with Piers Morgan. that he has all these critiques of Kamala Harris with the flip-flopping and the word salad and all this kind of stuff, but doesn't have those same critiques for Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is the master of word salad. Like Brian Tyler Cohen said, you know, he didn't say this specifically, others have, but Donald Trump always sounds like a kid doing a book report for a book that he didn't read. I mean, that's the perfect analogy to me for how Donald Trump sounds. So my biggest takeaway from this is Piers Morgan always claims not to be MAGA, you know, quote unquote a MAGA. He's not American, but it's the MAGA mindset. He's friends with Donald Trump. He's always going to support the guy and defend him. And he's always going to attack Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the other Democrats. But what did you think about this debate between Brian Tyler Cohen and Natalie Winters? Do you think Brian Tyler Cohen was the winner? Do you think Natalie Winters was the winner? I have to admit, I was not familiar with Natalie Winters prior to this debate on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and I didn't come away particularly, I mean, I don't want to be harsh, but I didn't come away particularly impressed by her. But let me know your comments about this debate on Piers Morgan Uncensored, or anything else that you want to comment about, whether it's Brian Tyler Cohen, Natalie Winters, or any of these other figures. And make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm now over 15,000 subscribers. I was just at 10,000 a couple of days ago, so things are growing really quickly, and that's thanks to your comments and your likes and subscribes. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do so. That's going to help me to continue to grow and bring out more content like this. This is Chris on Culture. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.